Sophie Lancaster's heart thundered like distant hooves as the cradle of silence in Nolan Frost's legendary ski chalet gave way to her voice. She lowered the microphone with trembling fingers, awareness flickering that tens of thousands of you were listening. This story, woven from icy secrets and smoldering passions, was about to begin. Before we dive into alpine intrigue, I've got 2 quick questions for you. Where are you watching from right now? Let me know in the comments. No matter how remote or grand your backdrop is, I want to hear your voice. If you live and breathe billionaire romance, smash that like button and hit subscribe to join our community of drama devotees. Your click is the spark that keeps this tale burning. Ready? Let's climb into the snow-scoured corridors of a fortune forged on snowboards, where a forgotten diary could change everything. A hush fell as the opening theme crashing chords and whispered. Winds faded out. Beneath the circulating rack of fur coats, the scent of pine and cigar smoke wrapped around Sophie like a velvet glove. Through the chalet's arched French windows, the world shimmered in moonlit frost, the peaks of the Rockies rising like marble, sentinels under an indigo sky. Sophie swept a lock of chestnut hair behind her ear. "Welcome," she whispered, more to herself than to you. Her voice soft yet urgent bore the weight of a confession waiting to be shared. She straightened, inhaled a breath cold enough to paint her thoughts, and launched into the prologue of a mystery thousands of feet above civilization. "Tonight," she began, "you will journey with me through corridors of power and whispers of betrayal." Her words floated through the polished wood halls and spilled into your ears like snowmelt. Every crackle of the fire behind her punctuated the promise of secrets soon to be unearthed. In that moment, she was not just a storyteller. She was your guide through glacial truths and heated desires. She saw your anticipation, each view, each click, each heartbeat echoing through the digital ether, and Sophie felt a surge of exhilaration. This is more than just a tale. It's a confession, a reckoning, and a romance all rolled into one. Yet before the first twist, I've got to ask, what would you risk to guard a secret worth millions? Tell me in the comments below, because by the end of this journey, you'll discover that sometimes the rarest treasures are the truths we bury in shadow. In the flickering firelight, Sophie took a step back, letting the chalet's ambience settle. Around you, the camera, or rather, your mind's eye slowly panned over tapestry-draped walls, crystal sconces, and the muted hum of classical piano floating from hidden speakers. Each detail was meticulously chosen to pull you deeper. The scent of aged mahogany, the muted clink of ice in a crystal tumbler, the distant echo of avalanche sirens in the valley below. Sophie pressed her gloved fingertips together. "I wasn't always a seeker of billion-dollar romances," she confessed, her tone folding into intimacy. "Once, I was just a small-town reporter chasing human interest stories. But then Nolan Frost crashed into my world, almost literally." A soft chuckle escaped her as she remembered the first time she encountered Frost, a late-night runway mix-up, a private jet redecorated in midnight blue leather, and a storm of paparazzi pinning him as the Snowboard Tycoon. You could almost see the icy glint in his sapphire blue eyes, the reckless grin as he vaulted from one fortune to the next. Sophie's gaze snapped back to you, but none of that mattered when I found the diary. She paused, letting the word diary hang in the room like frost on a branch. A simple leather-bound book, forgotten in a time-worn drawer, yet brimming with secrets that would turn love into an avalanche. She paused again, fingers brushing the edge of a nearby mantle. "And tonight, I'll read those pages aloud. Every secret, every betrayal, every stolen kiss." Her voice trembled with excitement and fear in equal measure. If you're ready for a journey through passion and peril, comment "I'm in" below, because once we start, there's no turning back. A low rumble like distant thunder reverberated through the chalet's beams. The soundtrack softened, the camera shifted, and Sophie stepped into the frame's center. The fire crackled louder, shadows dancing across her features. The diary belonged to Vanessa Blackwood, Sophie revealed, eyes glimmering. Nolan's estranged half-sister, disgraced heir to the Frost fortune. She vanished 6 years ago, accused of embezzlement and heartbreak. But her words, handwritten in violet ink, tell a different story. Sophie lifted a slender, silk-wrapped package from the mantel. Her gloved hand trembled as she peeled back the ribbon. The diary's cover, worn at the corners, smelled of cedar and secrets. "It was left here as if waiting for me," she whispered. You could feel the tension coiling. What truths lay buried within those pages? What forces had silenced Vanessa for so long? And most pressing of all, why was Nolan Frost so desperate to keep this diary hidden in his own chalet? What would you do in Sophie's shoes? Would you open that book or leave the past buried in snow? Comment below. ****, a soft chime signaled the end of the prologue. Sophie closed her eyes, inhaled the chalet's smoky warmth, and offered a final invitation. Fasten your seatbelts, folks. The storm is coming. Her smile was a promise. Her eyes, twin pools of moonlight, signaled the descent into a story of power, passion, and peril. You could almost feel the wind whip against your cheeks, the snow cracked beneath your boots, the chill of betrayal seeping into your bones. Before we begin Scene 1, take a moment. Did you hit like yet? Are you subscribed? And most importantly, where are you watching from? Drop your location below, and let's make this journey ours together. The diary waits, the secrets tremble, and the Snowboard Tycoon's empire stands on the brink. Are you ready to uncover what lies hidden inside that snow-dusted cover? A hush rippled through the vaulted hall as the last guest swept through the arched doorway. Crystal chandeliers dripped starlight onto polished marble floors so pristine they reflected silk gowns and tuxedo tails in ghostly doubles. Outside, the alpine air crackled with frost, but inside Nolan Frost's private ski chalet glowed with warmth, a golden oasis perched on a ledge of pine-clad rock. Every surface gleamed silver candelabras, mirrored columns, lacquered mahogany bars each, curated to project the Frost Empire's unshakable grandeur. Behind the champagne fountain, an ice sculpture of a snowboarder mid-jump captured the essence of Frost's fortune. Illuminated from within by cool LED lights, the translucent figure seemed poised between glory and collapse. Guests formed a silent semicircle, their hushed chatter a soft accompaniment to the gentle drip of melting ice. Above them, a custom soundscape blended Tchaikovsky with electronica, its pulsing rhythms echoing like a heartbeat beneath the vaulted beams. At the far end of the hall, floor-to-ceiling windows framed the moonlit peaks, their jagged silhouettes etched in silver against a velvet sky. The view was a silent promise. Beyond the warmth of this gala lay the frozen wilderness Nolan Frost had conquered to build his empire. He'd bought the mountain, sculpted its trails, and turned snowboards into gold. Tonight, that legacy lay before an audience of high rollers, influencers, and curious insiders, each drawn by rumors of a new announcement. Lanterns floated on the surface of an indoor skating rink carved into the stone floor. Beneath the thin ice, blue LED lights gave the illusion of a glacier's heart. Models in crystalline couture glided on the ice, their breaths dancing in the air like delicate smoke. The onyx-haired pianist, perched at an ivory grand just off the rink, framed each key with lacquered fingertips, weaving a tapestry of sound that wrapped around every corner. Meanwhile, waiters in midnight blue uniforms weaved through the crowds, silver trays balanced on one hand, offering delicacies like caviar tarts and sable canapes. Everywhere, whispers trailed after the guests, who had been invited and more importantly, who had been left out. Among the glittering throng were Frost loyalists in fur-trimmed jackets, old money scions from Aspen's earliest fortunes, and a smattering of paparazzi in discreet tuxedos, their sharp lenses disguised as one could almost feel the converging power plays, alliances being brokered over beluga bites, fortunes hanging in the balance with each polite nod and measured smile. In an alcove lined with Arctic white fur pelts, Sophie Lancaster observed the scene through a lorgnette she'd borrowed from the host's family collection. The delicate gold frame slipped against her fingertips as she adjusted her viewfinder to focus on Nolan. He stood at the rink's edge in a tailored charcoal suit, his posture relaxed, a glass of rose-tinged champagne in hand. Moonlight caught the sharp line of his jaw and the glint of confidence in his sapphire eyes. Even from a distance, Sophie felt the magnetic pull of his presence. The chalet's pillars were carved from local stone, each etched with scenes of the Frost family's ascent. A boy on a rudimentary plank, carving fresh lines into virgin snow. A young man negotiating ski resort mergers in Europe. The brand logos that became synonymous with luxury winter sports. Beneath these carvings, digital screens discreetly embedded in the walls showed highlights of Frost's latest designs, boards that sliced through powder as elegantly as swans through water. The screens pulsed with high-def action, gravity-defying jumps, World Championship victories, and frostbitten expeditions at dawn. Yet even amidst such opulence, a subtle tension threaded through the air. Over near the bar, a pair of women in fur stoles leaned so close their whispered conversation rippled like a pebble dropping into still water. On the other side of the rink, a sleek black Range Rover, Frost's personal snowcat conversion, sat parked on a platform of fake snow, its windows tinted to unreadable darkness. Rumor had it that this vehicle was more than a novelty. Some claimed Frost used it to whisk VIPs away on clandestine backcountry tours. Far from prying eyes, Sophie's breath misted across the lorgnette's lens as she shifted to catch a second glance. A group of fashion editors clustered beneath the grand staircase, comparing their notes on the gala's décours. Someone had commissioned 1,000 fresh poinsettias from an exotic greenhouse in Italy, each sprayed in iridescent white glitter. Elsewhere, a contingent of tech investors fiddled with AR goggles designed to overlay interactive graphics on the ice sculptures, as if high finance and high art had conspired to create an immersive theater of wealth. On a raised dais flanked by ice-carved throne chairs, the Frost family coat of arms glowed in subtle neon lines, a pair of crossed snowboards over a mountain peak, encircled by frost-tipped laurels. Beneath it, an empty podium waited. Porters in white gloves polished the mic stand, while stagehands adjusted spotlights to sculpt shadows that danced across the backdrop. Sophie felt her pulse quicken. The podium meant a speech was coming, an announcement that would reverberate through ski lodges and boardrooms alike. What could it be? As the pianist's final note faded, a single spotlight snapped on the podium. A hush deepened. Even the crackle of logs in the great stone fireplace seemed to pause. Sophie snapped down her lorgnette and ducked into the crowd. Edging closer, the party's murmur swelled into anticipatory silence. Across the room, Nolan Frost stepped forward, every eye magnetized by his calm authority. He placed a gloved hand on the lectern, straightened his tie, and scanned the guests with a flicker of challenge in his gaze. He cleared his throat. "Friends, colleagues, honored guests," he began, his voice resonant but warm, like the slow carve of fresh powder beneath a snowboard. The first chord of his words was met with appreciative applause. "Tonight," he continued, "we celebrate what happens when passion, precision, and perseverance converge." He paused, letting his words settle into the hearts of the assembled. "But I also want to acknowledge someone whose story has been lost in the rush of our triumphs." A ripple of curiosity swept through the crowd. Sophie felt a tightening knot in her chest. She knew what was coming next. Nolan's gaze flicked to a side door where two burly attendants stood guard over a small table draped in black velvet. On that table lay a single object, the leather-bound diary Sophie had discovered just hours earlier, the same diary that bore the name Vanessa Blackwood in looping violet ink. A murmur rose. Vanessa Blackwood, Nolan's half-sister, presumed disgraced and missing for years. The guests exchanged sidelong glances. Had Frost really invited her secrets back into the light here, in the den of his empire? Sophie edged closer still, her fingertips grazing the spine of her own notebook as she prepared to capture every scintilla of the unfolding drama. Nolan's eyes, those sapphire orbs that masked ambition with a hint of mischief, locked on the diary. "This," he said, voice heavy with unspoken weight, "is not just a relic of the past." He lifted the book with ceremonial care. A hush fell so profound it threatened to crack the chandeliers. "It belongs to my family. And tonight, you will hear what was written inside." The crowd leaned in. Even the ice skaters in mid-twirl paused to watch. Sophie felt her pulse spike as Nolan placed the diary on the podium, the lights catching the worn edges of its cover. What revelations lay within those pages? Betrayals, longings, confessions, perhaps even confessions that could topple empires. Before Nolan could open it, a sudden tremor shook the chalet. Glass quivered, a distant crack of thunder rolled through the mountains, and the soft scent of gunpowder roar was as a burst of fireworks wafted in from the terrace. Sophie's breath hitched. Someone had interrupted the moment. "What did you hear just then? Was that the promise of a celebration, or the prelude to chaos?" A storm was brewing, and at its eye lay the forgotten diary. ****. Sophie Lancaster was born beneath a steel sky in Trenton, New Jersey, a place where factory cranes loomed like sleeping giants, and the hum of machinery became lullabies. Her childhood home was a modest duplex on a quiet street, the paint peeling, but the windows always spotless, courtesy of her mother's fastidious care. Inside, the scent of fresh bread and coffee lingered every morning, a ritual that grounded Sophie even as she dreamed of distant, glittering worlds. From her earliest years, Sophie was a collector of stories. She scavenged for discarded newspapers in alleys, rescued library cast-offs, and filled battered journals with her own scribbles. By age 8, she'd memorized the bylines of the city's top journalists' names, like Marlowe, Kingsley, and Fiona. Chinan pretended she'd walk beside them one day on their triumphant walks to the press gallery. She taped printed headlines to her closet door, each a talisman of ambition. Her parents watched with pride and a touch of bemusement. Her father, a welder at the steel plant, would lift her onto his shoulders as they walked to buy groceries. One day, "Kiddo," he'd ruffle her hair, "you'll tell stories that shake the world." Her mother, who balanced 2 waitress shifts alongside weekend bookkeeping classes, embroidered her own hopes into Sophie's notebooks, stitching little doodles of press passes and roaring typewriters in the margins. School was Sophie's first stage. At Lincoln Elementary, she blazed through spelling bees and devoured every writing assignment with fervor. When teachers handed back essays marked with red ink, she studied each correction as if it were a roadmap to greatness. At recess, she'd set up a folding table and interview classmates on imaginary scandals who stole whose crayons, which swing was the fastest, all recorded in her scuffed reporter's notebook. The other children giggled at her seriousness, but Sophie felt the thrill of purpose with every question. By high school, her passion had crystallized into a plan: win a scholarship to the prestigious Sophia Cornell School of Journalism. But ambition alone wouldn't bridge the gap between Trenton and Manhattan's Ivy Leagues. She joined the school paper, the Trenton Times, serving as junior reporter, then editor-in-chief by senior year. Her first major scoop uncovering: misallocated prom, funds garnered, local headlines. It wasn't glamorous, but it tasted like victory, the kick of adrenaline when the truth saw the light. Outside the newsroom, Sophie balanced 2 part-time jobs. At dawn, she folded bagels behind the counter of a corner bakery, where flour dust clung to her eyelashes and the radio played old jazz. At dusk, she managed inventory at Mrs. Delacroix's antique bookstore, where heavy leather tomes whispered of histories Sophie longed to discover. By midnight, she'd return home, unlock her second-hand laptop, and type until her vision blurred, sustained by instant noodles and an unwavering conviction that her voice mattered. Her weekends were devoted to internships, shadowing a TV anchor in Newark, transcribing court hearings in Camden, and even sneaking into a Brooklyn publishing house to glean secrets of the trade. Each experience layered her skills. She learned to craft leads that sliced through confusion, to spot bias in source quotes, to ask questions that unsettled the most practiced liars. With every assignment, she carried a chipped notebook inscribed with her mantra: "Speak truth, stir souls." But ambition carried its own burdens. At 16, Sophie faced her first heartbreak. Ryan, her straight-A lab partner, ghosted her after she defied him to expose his cheating ring for extra credit. Their project had secured her top marks, but in the cafeteria's fluorescent hum, Ryan's shameful gaze had lashed her confidence. The sting of betrayal awakened her to a grim truth. People often feared the light she shone on others. She tucked that lesson in her back pocket for future battles. College acceptance letters arrived like confetti. She chose the Sophia Cornell School of Journalism, trading Trenton's industrial skyline for Manhattan's gleaming towers. The scholarship was generous but conditional: maintain a 3.9 GPA and secure summer internships. That winter, Sophie loaded 2 suitcases into a grandfather clock-shaped cab and watched her childhood recede behind the Hudson. As the skyline drew near, her heart thudded like a drumroll. Grand stages awaited, but the stakes had grown immeasurably higher. Life in the city was exhilarating and brutal. Dorm walls were paper-thin. Her roommates' late-night infatuations became Sophie's backdrop. Tuition deadlines loomed like storm clouds, and rent devoured paychecks before they landed. She survived on cold pizza and community college-level coffee, though every article she wrote for the campus magazine glimmered with the promise of something more. Each byline was a stepping stone, each rejection letter a lesson in resilience. Sophomore year brought her first professional break, a summer internship at Metro Today, Manhattan's most read tabloid. She chased mugshots, pitched exposes on gentrification, and spent late nights fact-checking copy with bloodshot eyes. Editor Wyatt Donovan, a grizzled guru of the trade, recognized her talent. kid," he'd bark, leaning over her desk. "You've got the nose of a hound for a story, but learn to modulate your bite." He taught her to temper righteous outrage with nuance, to pass complex truths through empathetic lenses. By senior year, Sophie's bylines extended beyond campus. Freelance assignments for Glimpse magazine and True North News landed on her resume. On weekends, she filed from remote towns Coverdale, Vermont, Heart's End, Maine, often at her own expense, chasing human interest pieces that never made the front page but lit small fires in her spirit. She documented a beekeeper's quest to save collapsing hives, a retired boxer's fight against dementia, and a ballet troupe's revival of a lost choreographer's masterpiece. Graduation was bittersweet. Her parents flew in on a prop plane, two proud faces in a sea of mortarboards. She realized how far she'd come, from coloring contest ribbons to holding an actual diploma in a crowded cathedral. Yet, as she stepped into the sunlit quad on commencement day, diploma in hand, she felt an ache of recognition that her journey had only just begun. The world was vast, and her voice still fledgling. Post-graduation, Sophie landed a junior reporter role at Citylene Weekly, a glossy magazine known for its in-depth features. Her desk, wedged between gossip columnists and ad sales reps, overlooked a brick-walled courtyard. The office smelled of stale coffee, printer ink, and ambition. She threw herself into every assignment: investigative exposes on corrupt city councillors, photo essays on subway performers, long-form profiles of entrepreneurs defying the odds. Each story honed her craft. It was during this stint that she first heard of Nolan Frost through a wire service blurb about his Arctic expeditions. The quote was tantalizing: "Conquering ice is like taming one's demons." Sophie filed the snippet under potential future feature. She never imagined that years later, she'd hold something far more intimate than a stock press release: the diary of a woman, entwined in Frost's lineage. Her work drew praise and envy in equal measure. By year 3, she'd been nominated for a regional journalism award for a feature on a homeless orchestra in Philadelphia. Her parents buzzed with pride when she featured on TV interviews. Her father actually cracked a rare smile on live broadcast. Yet Sophie remained restless. The corporate grind of weekly deadlines chafed against her idealism. Something bigger awaited, something that transcended reporters, notebooks, and fact-checking. Late one January evening, she sat alone in the Citylene archive room, scanning obituaries for promising leads. The lights dimmed around her as the building emptied. A stack of unsigned diaries, personal artifacts the magazine acquires when public libraries neglect their donation bin, sat unlabeled on a trolley. Sophie pulled one open at random. Delicate cursive, violet ink, the first line reading, "I fear my own family more than the cold." Her pulse quickened. She recognized Frost's chalet address in the header: Rockridge Peak, CO. That loose sheet was an invitation, a siren's call. She catalogued it, then cross-referenced with corporate filings. Frost Enterprises had acquired the old Rockridge resort last season, promising a lavish relaunch. Sophie sensed something valuable in that diary, a story that spanned wealth, betrayal, and raw human emotion. But without access to the full book, she had only tantalizing fragments, an unfinished puzzle. A week later, Sophie pitched an exclusive: Vanessa Blackwood's Lost Words. Could Nolan Frost's empire be built on secrets? The pitch deck was meticulous: images of the chalet's construction, public statements from Frost PR, legal filings hinting at family disputes. She outlined her intention to locate Vanessa's diary in full, to contrast the public persona of the Snowboard Tycoon with the woman he'd publicly disowned. The editor's reply was swift but cautious: "Proceed at your own risk. Frost's legal team is quick to squash anyone who digs too deep." Risk, however, was Sophie's compass. The moment the email landed, she knew she was at a crossroads: chase a routine feature, or pursue a story that could define or destroy her career. She traced a finger around the margins of her tablet, feeling her mother's stitched press pass, doodles beneath her touch. In that moment, every past struggle, the late shifts, the cramped apartments, the heartbreaks coalesced into a single imperative: find the diary, tell the truth. She reached for her phone and dialed an old contact: Harper Lee Vaughn, a former classmate turned private investigator. "Harper," Sophie said, voice steeled, "I need access to a missing family heirloom. Are you in?" Harper's soft chuckle crackled through the line. "Always, Sophie. But you know what you're asking, right? This is Frost territory." Sophie closed her eyes. the skyline of her hometown faint behind her lids. "I know," she whispered, "but every empire is built on something. I want to know what's at its foundation." And so, Sophie Lancaster, small-town dreamer, turned tenacious journalist, set her sights on Rockridge Peak. She packed her battered notebooks, reinforced her recorder, and booked a red-eye flight to Denver. She carried memories of grit, of late-night epiphanies, and of the promise her parents made years ago: speak truth, stir souls. But the world she entered now was draped in opulence and shadows, and the diary she sought was buried beneath family loyalty, corporate power plays, and buried secrets. What would you sacrifice to chase a dream that could topple a billionaire's kingdom? Asterisk, asterisk. A shard of crystal slipped from Sophie's grasp, tumbling through golden lamplight and shattering at Nolan Frost's feet. The guest's gasped eyes fractured on marble, a fine spray of champagne misting the crowd. Sophie's cheeks flamed as she knelt to gather the fragments, her skirt fanning like a startled swan. Nolan Frost, towering in charcoal silk, paused mid-sip. He surveyed the damage, a custom artisan sculpture, melted by spilled bubbles, now weeping liquid pearls across the floor. The hush deepened, an accidental desecration of his carefully orchestrated perfection. Sophie's inner voice screamed apology, but her public words stumbled. "I am so sorry." The gala's security tightened around her, uniforms crisp as winter's edge. Reporters craned for a shot. Influencers primed their lenses. Her mistake had instantly become headline fodder. Then Frost stepped forward. His sapphire gaze was inscrutably Quillpart's disdain and curiosity. "It's just crystal," he said, voice low enough for only Sophie to hear. He extended a gloved hand. "Let me help." Relief tangled with embarrassment as he guided her upright. The tension in the hall trembled like a ski rope in a blizzard. Guests released their collective breath. Was it forgiveness, or just another display of billionaire magnanimity? Moments later, Frost's chief of staff intercepted Sophie with an envelope bearing the Snowboard Tycoon's insignia, a single-use invitation to his private chalet at Rockridge Peak. "Tonight," the note read in frost-tipped script, "your apology will be accepted in person." By midnight, Sophie found herself ascending in a snowcat conversion, its engine humming beneath faux snow floodlights. Up the perilous switchback, the world below glowed pinpoints of orange. Above, stars glittered like a promise. Inside the chalet, silence reigned. Frost's guests had departed, leaving only the crackle of a great stone hearth. He offered her a glass of mulled wine and tours of the private library where family heirlooms lined frosted oak shelves. Magnificent volumes, gilded spines, secrets stored behind glass dot. Then Sophie's foot caught on something hidden beneath a velvet throws, a leather-bound book, its cover creased and dust-mapled. She bent to pick it up. The name Vanessa Blackwood shimmered on the front in violet ink. Her breath caught. Frost watched her, arms folded, as if waiting for a delicate bloom to open. Sophie's pulse thundered. This wasn't just a diary, it was a confession, a key to a family's unspoken history. "What would you do, Sophie?" Wondered aloud, voice barely more than a whisper, "if you held someone's hidden truth?" The diary's lock clicked as she pressed her thumb to the latch. Asterisk, asterisk. Sophie's fingers hovered above the diary's latch, palms slick with wine-warm perspiration. Her heartbeat drummed like avalanche thunder. Across the room, Nolan Frost watched in near impenetrable silence, eyes and fire flickering in his gaze. Memories flashed, late-night research in cramped archives. Her parents' hopeful smiles, the collective gasp when she'd first pitched Vanessa's lost words. Now, exposed to a billionaire's glare, Sophie felt the tremor of doubt. Had she overreached? A distant crackle of logs echoed. Sophie tucked a stray hair behind her ear, voice small. I didn't expect." Her words faltered under Frost's cool appraisal. He stepped forward, each footfall measured on the plush rug. "Vanessa's secrets aren't for a magazine," he said softly, fingertips brushing the diary's spine. "They're personal." His tone held both admonition and something gentle regret, concern. Sophie inhaled, caught between professional fire and human empathy. This diary could be her ticket to journalistic immortality, or the catalyst for a family's ruin. She closed her eyes, recalling Harper's warning. Frost territory is merciless. Behind her, the firelight danced on a portrait of Vanessa Blackwood, as a child eyes bright hair, wild smile unguarded. The image seemed to plead, "Honor my story." Sophie raised her gaze to meet Frost's. "I need to know the truth," she said. voice stronger than she felt, not for a byline, but because everyone deserves to be heard. His jaw clenched. The chalet's opulence felt suddenly suffocating, the weight of expectation in every carved beam. He exhaled, releasing his own tension. "Very well," he whispered. "Read one page, but know this. Once the past is unleashed, it cannot be contained." Sophie's pulse surged. A single page could change everything. She pressed her thumb to the latch and heard the click. What would you risk to free buried truths? Asterisk, asterisk. The diary fell open to a page stained with faded tears. Violet ink curled into confessions. Sophie inhaled, the words searing her mind. "I watched him kiss her in the snow." Before she could read more, Frost's voice cut through the hush. "That entry, it's not mine to share." He reached out, hand stopping inches from the page. Sophie looked up, surprise and frustration warring in her gaze. "You invited me here," she whispered. "You said I could read." He shook his head, sapphire eyes dark. "You can, but I choose what you see." His tone carried the weight of absolute authority. Sophie's stomach lurched. This billionaire, who wielded kingdoms on ice, now dictated her investigation's boundaries. Yet within his command lay a twisted kindness. He protected his sister's dignity, even from prying eyes. She closed the diary gently. "Then, show me the part you want me to see." A slow smile curved on his lips, part challenge, part homage. "Follow me." He led her down a dim corridor lit by lantern sconces. The walls were lined with family portraits, each a chapter in the Frost legacy. They stopped before a stained glass door etched with a lone snowboarder. Frost pressed a hidden latch. Inside, a private archive glowed beneath glass cases. Vanessa's sketchbooks, childhood letters, a faded ski lift ticket. Frost knelt and lifted a small folder. "This is her truth," he said, handing it to Sophie. Her breath caught. Instead of a public spectacle, he offered intimacia, curated confession meant for her alone. "What would you reveal if you could control your own story?" Asterisk, asterisk. Morning light carved slashes through the archive's stained glass. Sophie spread Vanessa's letters on a polished oak table. Outside, snow whispered against the windows. Frost entered with coffee steaming in bone-white china. He watched her scan a letter. "Mother says I'm a disgrace." His jaw tightened. Sophie looked up. The matriarch pushed her out. Frost's fingers curled around his cup. "My mother wouldn't admit it, but yes." His voice carried a frost-bitten edge. She saw Vanessa's compassion as weakness. Down the hall, muted voices swelled. Frost's sister, Lydia, had arrived, icy, composed, wielding her own claim to the Frost name. Sophie peered through the archway. Lydia, in sable fur, eyes cool behind diamond-rimmed glasses, flanked by two attorneys. A hush rippled through the villa. Lydia's entrance felt like a glacial fault line opening. Frost's shoulders squared, tension crackling between sibling rivalry and blood memory. Sophie's pulse quickened. She gathered letters, ink smudged from loving fingertips. "What happens now?" Frost's gaze flicked to the sealed door. "My family never let truths settle peacefully." "How far would you go to defend a sister's honor?" Morning's pale light filtered through frosted panes as Sophie returned to the archive. Frost awaited her with a silver tray, 2 porcelain cups of Earl Grey, steam curling like whispered secrets. He offered one without a word. His gaze softened. As she cradled the warm mug, they settled on a leather chaise overlooking the valley. Frost pointed to a hidden art corner tucked behind velvet drapes. Vanessa's watercolor sketches of alpine meadows, delicate strokes, capturing sunrise's first blush. Sophie traced a daisy painted in violet. "Hugh's Vanessa's favorite." "Your sister loved the mountains," Frost murmured, "but she also loved this place." He pressed a sketch into Sophie's hand, a child's silhouette against a storm. She dreamt of peace. His voice cracked. The moment stretched, charged, with unspoken intimacy. Sophie met his eyes, feeling the tremor of shared loss. Frost's fingers brushed hers as he reclaimed the sketch. An electric spark. What small gesture would melt your defenses? "Like if you feel the tension. Comment heart, if this slow burn warms you." Asterisk, asterisk. A sharp knock shattered the calm. Sophie's breath caught as a familiar voice hissed her name. She opened the door to find Ryan Morales, her high school lab partner, turned local TV anchor back in Trenton. Eyes fierce. "Thought you'd vanished into billionaire snowstorms." He spat, stepping into the glow of chandelier light. The air crackled with old wounds. Sophie's stomach lurched. His arrival felt like a stake through her new world. "You made me look foolish," Ryan snarled, voice echoing off marble walls. "Exposing him was one thing, inviting you here. You're chasing headlines over ethics." His words cut deep. Frost emerged from the library, cool indifference masking curiosity. Ryan's glare flicked to him, then to Sophie's trembling hands clutching Vanessa's letters. Sophie squared her shoulders. "This isn't about me or you. It's about her story." Ryan laughed, bitter as winter's wind. "Your ambition blinds you. But go ahead, dig up ghosts. Just don't pretend you're saving anyone. Could you confront a past love for a greater cause? Comment truth, if you'd stand your ground." That afternoon, the grand ballroom transformed into a media arena. Reporters lined the edges, cameras on tripods like silent sentinels. A long table held Vanessa's diary, its cover sealed. Under glass, Frost stood behind a cluster of microphones, Sophie at his side, heart in her throat. "Thank you for coming," Frost began, voice steady. "Today, we address rumors and reveal truths." He gestured to the diary. "Ms. Lancaster will read from one entry." Sophie approached, pulse pounding. The assembled crowd leaned forward. Flashbulbs ignited like mini avalanches. She lifted the diary's lid, fingers trembling. Before she could read, Lydia Blackwood strode in, crimson lips curved in a challenge, flanked by a lawyer clutching court papers. "You have no right to expose these pages," Lydia declared, voice cold and commanding. "This is a family matter, sealed by legal decree." A roar of questions erupted. Reporters shouted over each other. Cameras panned between Frost's stoic face, Sophie's determined eyes, and Lydia's frosty composure. Time split, every second stretched into a precipice. Sophie's hand hovered above the first line. Should Sophie read against a court injunction or respect the law? What would you do? Comment below. ***. Sophie's breath trembled as the courtroom papers fluttered in Lydia's hand. Frost's steady voice cut through the chaos. "No law can silence a personal truth." He met Sophie's eyes. "Read." Hands shaking, Sophie cleared her throat and spoke. "December 12th, Mother locked me in the vault." Her voice cracked. Each word struck like an icicle, revealing Vanessa's imprisonment, an ultimate escape. The room stilled as raw grief and courage intertwined. As Sophie finished, silence bloomed. Then, Lydia gasped, her composed mask fracturing. Frost stepped forward and gently took Sophie's hand. "Thank you for giving her a voice," he said, tears glinting in his sapphire gaze. Elsewhere in the room, cameras captured every tear and tremor, an avalanche of emotion, exposing the Frost family's fractures. Sophie's heart pounded, yet a profound peace settled over her. She had honored Vanessa's truth. Would you risk your heart to heal another's wounds? ***. Weeks later, Sophie stood before a crowd in Trenton's community center, her passion project unveiled, voices unburied, a workshop empowering citizens to share hidden stories. Behind her, a gallery displayed Vanessa's sketches, courtesy of Nolan Frost's secret sponsorship. She recounted how a diary found in a snow-scoured chalet transformed her life and, she hoped, would inspire others to speak their truths. In the front row, Frost watched proudly, his casual blazer exchanged for a simple sweater, blending in among attendees. After the event, Sophie and Frost slipped outside into the crisp evening. Lanterns lined the path. Children's laughter echoed from the center's windows. Frost brushed a snowflake from her hair. "You did this," he whispered. Sophie smiled, warmth flooding her chest. "We did. What story will you unearth next? Comment your idea below. ***. And that, dear viewers, is how a forgotten diary unearthed the family's buried past and sparked a revolution of voices. If you felt the frost of secrecy melt into the glow of truth, hit like, share this journey with fellow truth seekers, and subscribe for our next Billionaire love friction saga. Where will secrets take us next? Until then, stay curious, stay courageous, and I'll see you on the next emotional roller coaster. Thanks for joining. Don't forget to ring the bell, so you never miss a heartbeat of drama.